Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our regular family of seekers. And we are reading through the Bhagavad-gītā, verse by verse, talking about its relevance to our lives and really just trying to understand it more in a way that it becomes like real to us as we move through our days and our lives. And we start to see our lives through the lens of the Gita. Right? That's kind of our goal here in coming together twice a week, studying these texts, discussing them together. So thank you all for going on this journey together and with me. And let's go ahead and start. Today we're at a new chapter today. We just finished the seventh chapter. So today we are starting the eighth chapter. Yes, thank you. I would forget that. We'll do prayers. Let me just say the eighth chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. Okay, that's the name of the eighth chapter. And let's do prayers first and then we'll talk about it. Good idea, Shakti. Okay, Shakti, when you're ready, could you lead us in the prayers?
I'm honored. I'm honored. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Shapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kara Mayam Dandati Sva Pandatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rugan Sagrajatam Sahagano Raganathan Vitam Tamsajivam Sagaravaitam Sahadvatam Parija Sahatam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vrishakan Vitams He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Garundi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Shakti. Such a great way to orientate this class, starting with that, just that intention of gratitude. Gratitude for our teachers, gratitude for this lineage. We all just subside on the blessings of people that have walked this path before us. And that's why we're here today. And that's why we have access to this knowledge. And we're just grateful. We're just grateful for that. Right. And how much does that change the mood of your day when we just practice that gratitude, right? Before class, before we start the day. Right? So thank you, Shakti. So we're going into the eighth chapter today. And if we remember at the very end of the seventh chapter, the end of the seventh chapter, it closes by introducing three big themes. Those big themes are material nature, the demigods, and this concept of sacrifice. And naturally, Arjuna wants to understand them more deeply. Right? So as the eighth chapter begins, he's going to ask Krishna what they actually mean. And as you see, like as we've been going through the Gita, we've heard these terms, we've talked about these terms. But what's happening here is as we go deeper and deeper into the Gita, they're like unfolding more, right? We're getting deeper into the meaning of these terms and their relevance, right? So Krishna's going to answer each one in order. And then the last question that Arjuna is going to ask, that Krishna is going to spend most of the whole chapter answering, is how can one remember Krishna at the time of death? Right? And that's kind of like the answer to that question kind of categorizes the whole eighth chapter here. Right? And that's where Krishna kind of takes his time and really explains this. Right? Because this question, it's not just theoretical, it's practical, it's urgent, it's essential for every living being. I mean, what to speak of Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield, right? But for us too, Because like we've talked about several times, we're all on that journey together. We'll all meet our death at some point. Right? So that's what this chapter kind of centers around, how one can remember Krishna at the time of death. And it basically just unpacks this point. Right? So let's just get right into it. The first two verses are Arjuna's questions. The third and fourth verse is Krishna's answer to the first six questions. And then the rest of the chapter is Krishna's answer to this question about remembrance of him at the time of death, which we won't get to that section today, but we'll unpack some of these terms and hopefully we'll dig deeper a little bit into them so that you all can walk away and see again how they show up in your life and how they help you remember Krishna, right? Because that's really the whole point. That's the whole point. These things should all just lead us back to Krishna. So we'll talk about how they do that and how they can do that for us. Okay, so let's start with text one. Let me share my screen. And then Stella, when you're ready, can you read it for us?
Yes. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, we'll just move on. Okay, so this is the start of all the questions that Arjuna's asking, right? And starting with this big one, what is Brahman? Right? And along the way, he's also going to explain what karma is, that's fruit of activity, right? As well as the principles of yoga and devotional service, right? Especially how to do it in its purest form. Right? So Arjuna here, he's basically pausing here and he's saying, hold on, Krishna. Can you clear this up for me? Like, what exactly is Brahman? What's the self? What is karma? Right? What is the material world? Who are the demigods? And we may think like, wait a second, why is Arjuna asking about karma? Like we've talked about this so many times before in the Gita. And it's true, we have definitely talked about karma. We've also talked about how many different uses there are of the word karma. Like you'll hear it in so many different contexts. And that's what's happening here. Arjuna's asking again because Krishna just used it in a very specific way at the end of the seventh chapter. And Arjuna's kind of trying to zoom into that. Like, what do you mean when you say karma in that context? Right? And if we remember in that verse, verse 729. Krishna said that those who take shelter of him go beyond old age and death. Right? And they come to understand Brahman and all of their activities. Right? Their karma becomes transcendental. Their karma becomes transcendental when they take shelter of him. Right? And so that's a little different sense of the word than just, we think of karma as like cause and effect, right? Or like action, right? This is where your karma becomes transcendental when you take shelter of God. So Arjuna's again just zooming in, like, what does that actually mean? Right? So we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that in the third verse. We'll pick that apart as Krishna answers, right? How can we make this karma transcendental? And then the second point here, the Bhagavatam tells us that the supreme absolute truth can be understood in three ways. Right? We talked about these three ways, these three manifestations of God. Does anybody want to throw one out here? Three manifestations of God. Anyone want to throw one out?
Material?
No. So this is like the realizations of God.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Want to try
like
again?
the Brahmin with the
Yes.
effulgence.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one.
Paramatma.
Yep.
Yep.
That's what is that, Mariah?
Paramatma, like the super soul within the heart.
Yep.
And
So that's
Bhagavan.
two.
And then
Yeah.
Bhagavan, yeah.
Perfect. And Bhagavan is
Personal.
the personal form of God. Right. Okay. So when we hear the word Brahman, that's what we think, that realization of God. God is everywhere, God is everything. Okay, but when Krishna uses the word Brahman in this context, it's actually referring to the living entity, so the individual soul. It's also called Brahman. So that's again these words, and this was really confusing for me when I first came in, because you'll hear these words all over, and it's like sometimes it's hard to understand what they are when they're used in so many different ways. It's like, how do I make that connection? But just understand that you're going to see these words in different contexts and they mean different things. So here the individual soul he's calling Brahman, right? And then Krishna, or then Arjuna asked about Atma, right, which is a term that's covering the body, the mind, the soul, and the senses, right? Basically, like the whole package of who we are, right? So when the last point that I'm going to say about this verse before we move on is that in this verse, when Arjuna is asking these questions, he addresses Krishna as Purushottama, right? Which means the supreme person. And this is important and is a sweet little like subtlety of the Gita that we see all over. When Krishna and Arjuna are talking to each other, they have kind of like these little names for each other that kind of reveal the relationship dynamic, right? And they help kind of put us there, right? Like he's not just like when he says Purushottama, the supreme person, like it's highlighting here that like he's not just talking to a friend or a teacher, like he's speaking to the ultimate authority. Right? And Arjuna's acknowledging that in that way that he's addressing him. Right? Like he's trusting him. Like you're the ultimate authority. You can give a clear, definitive answer about life, about the soul, about the universe. Right? So these are the questions. These are, I think there was 5 questions in here. Text 2, we're going to move on. We're going to get to the 6th and 7th question, and then we're going to start to answer them. Well, Krishna's going to start to answer them, and we're going to jump on and learn. Right? Does anybody want to share anything before we move on?
I just have a quick question. You said when he's talking about Brahman, he's talking about the individual souls?
Yeah, in this context.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I would read Gita, that was so confusing for me because I was like, wait, there's Brahma, Brahman, and then there's like Brahma Jyoti, and I'm like, there's so many. What are these all mean? But okay.
Yeah.
So individual souls, like just like in general, and then Atma is like our soul combined with the material body. Is that what you were saying, right?
In this context, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Yeah. It is a little bit confusing, but yeah, that's the context that these words are being used in here. Okay, should we move on to the 2nd verse? When you're ready, Stella.
Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death?
Great. So these are the second 2 questions, or the second 2. Yeah, there's like 7 questions right up front here. Right? There's 5 terms in the first verse that Arjuna's asking about, wanting to zoom into, and then there's 2 terms here in the second verse that he's doing the same thing. Who is the Lord of sacrifice? How does he live in the body? Right? Like who is God, and how does he live in the body? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? And that's the big question that's going to take most of the chapter. But in the meantime, we'll break this down a little bit so that we can understand it a little bit better. So first he's asking, who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he reside in the body? Right? And we know that's in Vedic culture, it's generally understood that the Supreme Lord has a manifestation within the heart of every living being. Right? We know that. That's the Paramatma realization we were just talking about. Right? But Arjuna wants to know, how exactly does that absolute truth, the Supreme, dwell inside of us? So again, he's just getting deeper into these truths. Right? And then he asked the big question, the mic drop question. Right? How can a devotee recognize you at the time of death? And this is huge because Krishna just wrapped up chapter 7 by saying, again, that those who take shelter in him can remember him at the time of death. So Arjuna, he's pressing into this. He's like, okay, but how does that really work? right? He wants to go deeper than just like theoretical, just like knowing it. Like, okay, how does that work? Right? And this is a big deal because we know that whatever we practice in life gets tested at that final moment. Right? And Arjuna, he's anxious to know here if someone is constantly engaged in God consciousness, what happens to them at the time of death? And this is fair, right? Because death it can be not super peaceful, right? Death could be not a very calm moment, right? The body's shutting down, the minds can be disturbed, right? It can be hard to focus on God. And if anybody's ever been with anybody during their passing, maybe experienced some of these things, right? Like how in that moment, when a person's going through all of this, can they actually fix their mind on God? And there's this beautiful prayer. I think it talks about this in the purport. It's this great devotee. He says, "My dear Lord, I'm healthy right now. My mind is steady. Better let me die immediately so that the swan of my mind can enter the stem of your lotus feet." Right. And he's using that swan as a metaphor because swans love to dive into lotus flowers. He's saying, right now my mind is undisturbed. So if I leave my body now thinking of you, my devotional service will be perfect. Right? But if I wait until natural death, who knows? Right? My throat may be choked up. My mind may be wandering. I might not even be able to chant your name. Right? And that's kind of where Arjuna's getting at here. Like, how can someone stay fixed on Krishna's lotus feet even in that final chaotic moment? And as usual, I'll just point out again because this is really sweet and it's nice for us to notice and pick up. Arjuna uses another little like title for Krishna when he addresses him. He calls him Madhusudana, right? That's his style. He's like glorifying him because Madhusudana is one of Krishna's names. It literally means the slayer of the demon Madhu, right? And in the stories of the Puranas, there was this demon named Madhu who represented ignorance and illusion, and Krishna killed him. So now when Arjuna's calling Krishna Madhusudana, he's both glorifying him and he's reminding him of that aspect of Krishna, right? The one who destroys ignorance and obstacles. And so it fits really nicely here. He's basically saying, Krishna, you're the one who removes illusion and confusion. Please clear this up for me. And so it's really sweet. Again, we get kind of insights into their moods and into their intentions by these kind of, and into their relationship dynamics by these kinds of names that they address each other as. So just to kind of point that out. But this is a good thing for us to all reflect on too. If our final moment, if we reflect on the way that we live our lives day to day, what would that final moment look like for us now? And this is funny because like no one likes to think about death, no one likes to talk about death, right? But the reality is, it's like it's going to happen for all of us. Every day is like we're a step closer on that journey, right? So for us to really think like, what are we doing today to prepare for that? And if we were to go today, how does what we've been doing up till this point, how will that impact that? Right? And Krishna's going to give us some instructions, and we're going to learn, and we've been learning, right, how we can live our lives today so that we're even better prepared for that. So that's where we're going. And the third verse, we're going to start to unpack some of these things. The first were just kind of like questions, but here it's going to get fun, and hopefully you can hear some reflections from some of you. Does anybody want to share anything before we move on to the third verse? Oh, Shakti, I just saw your hands up. Please share with us.
Yeah, as you're talking about this, I'm just reminded of the battlefield and Arjuna, like not even having any idea of what's going on, and just like how you're saying, unpack and unfold. Like I'm thinking of how this is unfold. Now he's like, okay, I know who you are. I know what's happening. Please give me more information so that when at the time of death, I can think of you. I can chant your holy name or think of your lotus feet. So like even before this is where you unpacked it. So like in the last couple of chapters is where he didn't really know. He was just like, how do I do this? What do you mean? And he thought Krishna was his friend. And then all of a sudden, like how things have, like you said, the word is unpacked, but really how it has unpacked. And now he's saying he knows who he is now. And he's saying, okay, I need these questions. I need to understand. He really wants, and really, I feel like this is Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, but this is him really helping us to understand. Like, are asking the question, but he's saying, okay, he wants us through this question so that all of us can understand how to think of him at the time of death. That's what
Hmm.
I'm getting from this.
Those are beautiful realizations and so right on. And I love how you brought it back to like let's just remember what's going on here in the context of the Gita. They're in the middle of the battlefield having this conversation. Like this is an emergency situation. Like just like you said, like Arjuna doesn't know what's on the other side of it for him or for all of his relatives. And that's why this setting of the Gita is so important. You know, a lot of people think the Gita is about war or like no, it's not at all about war. I mean, that happens to be the context, but more to represent that this is like an emergency situation. And to even highlight, you know, Arjuna's a warrior. His duty is to fight. And he's getting instruction that he's kind of thinking of he's not wanting to fight. His duty is to fight. He's not wanting to fight, and he's getting instruction to fight. And his whole like conception of reality is being challenged. And so in that way, it's so relatable because how often that happens for us. Like this is the journey of life, right? We have these identities, we have these conceptions of reality, we have these attachments, and at some point these things confront us or at different points, you know, and we're faced with these challenges and where do we turn in those moments, right? Do we turn who do we take shelter of? So that's such a nice point. Thank you, Stacy or Shakti. Okay, let's go to text 3 whenever you're ready, Stella.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyat. Ad, I can't say that word.
Adhyatma.
Adhyatma,
Adhyatma.
the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma or fruitive activities.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Okay.
helping.
Yeah. So now we're gonna dive into these meanings, right? And just first we'll recognize here that the Gita was spoken in a specific culture and time, and in that, like the words can be confusing, maybe not super relatable, right? If especially if we don't understand the context, right? But we're gonna do our best here to kind of unpack this as Krishna explains these terms from a devotional perspective, right? And how they can relate to our spiritual journey, right? So first is that word Brahman, right? And personalists might say like I am Brahman, meaning like the universal impersonal consciousness, right? But again, in this context, it's referring to the soul, the individual soul, not the Supreme Lord, the individual soul. Right? That's this in this context. And then where we're going to go next here, Krishna teaches that the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman. Okay. Prabhupada clarifies that this is the soul itself, right? And in chapter 7, Krishna says that when living entities take shelter in him to transcend old age and death, they regain their spiritual platform and rediscover their eternal identity as indestructible souls. Right? So if we really kind of like sit in this realization, right? It's what it's revealing here is that the soul's true nature and its unique role is in the spiritual world. Right? It's like we again something that we hear, but do we really connect with it? Right? Do we really live like we're spirit souls? right? Because if we had this clarity, if we had the depth of this realization, the soul can serve Krishna wholeheartedly. And this is the thing, the living entity has a flexible identity, right? Sometimes we identify with material nature, right? We get caught up in matter and we forget our true self, right? And other times we identify with our spiritual nature, right? And because of this like, dual potential of the living entity, he's called marginal energy, right? Which means he's like a tiny spark of the divine, but not the whole. And depending on the identification, the soul either receives a material body or a spiritual body. So at that time of death, depending on what you're identified with, will determine your next body. And if you're overly identified with your material identifications, you'll get a material body. Right? And that's why this is so important that we do this. We do this twice a week. We all have our own, spiritual practices and association throughout the week. What we're doing is trying to remember that we're actually a spiritual body, or we're actually a spiritual spark, right? So that at that time of death, we'll remember that. That's where our consciousness will be such that we obtain a spiritual body and we're not dropped back into this cycle of repeated birth and death. Right? Because in the material world, when we're dropped back into the repeated cycle of birth and death, we can take any of these 8.4 million species of life, right? We can come back as a human, an animal, a bird, a demigod, right? Depending on your karma. And that's what this word karma means in this context. It's like the activities that we do that create our next body. And we should really think about that, right? Because when we're doing things that endorse this narrative that I am, I am a teacher, I am a mother, I am a wife. If our identities are limited just in the material domain, in our next life we will come back to live that out. We'll get a material body to continue that narrative out. Right? So that's why this is so important. Yes, we have our material roles. And yes, there are material roles, great. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm an employee. These things are great. But we can't just stop at that. And we have to understand that first our identity is a spirit soul. First we're a servant of God. And then all these other material identities that come in, they can support that identity. And this is how you transform karma into akarma. And that's where we're getting to next. Right? Karma is these activities that we do that get us a material body, right? But akarma is when we do these activities with no attachment, right? And as an offering to God, and in that way the activities liberate us. Right? And that's where we're going. So in spiritual life, we have one eternal blissful body. Right? We have one eternal blissful body. Does anybody want to share anything? Are you guys following this? Katie, please share.
Hi, Bo. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, this is so great. It had me thinking a few things. Like, adding, it's amazing how much is on offer for us to kind of fill up our time in such a wonderful way with such a variety of practices. And like, and that's very helpful, leading to trying to be thinking of Krishna at time of death. I mean, the more time we can fill with our Krishna consciousness is like a big part of the goal, Yeah, so I'm just really grateful for that, and how like I remember at first being like, what lectures do I listen to? Like, where are, or not knowing about different days of the year, and just how nice it's been to keep adding and adding.
Mm-hmm. And you have added. I've known you for a couple of years, and all I've seen you do is add. So
thanks. And then, yeah, and I was thinking like in a practical way, I want to have a sort of, maybe difficult conversation with my boss. And I was thinking like, okay, the only way I'm going to like allow myself to do that.
Allow yourself to what? You went out a little bit. Allow yourself to what?
To have a difficult conversation with my boss is if I can like commit to myself to maintain remembering my true nature, and like remembering like in that I can't, I will really try not to get over emotional, not to get like disrespectful, not to get this and that, yeah. And so I think that's kind of what we're aiming for here, is like weaving Krishna in all the time, like as much as we can. And then that leads us right up to the moment of, this body passing. And yeah, and I think it's really beautiful how like we can see the reciprocation, for example, with the Bhagavatam set, like with the books, like choosing to stop some of the TV and fill more of my time with listening to the wisdom of the sages and the Bhagavatam. And then Krishna reciprocates by having the Bhagavatam show up at my house, and like how much mercy is that that there's instruments, like you are an instrument of that. Like how wonderful for both me and
I
you.
I had some friends that sponsored a Bhagavatam set for Katie. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share all that. I hope you guys can hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a mic drop moment, Katie.
Terrible.
This realization is incredible. And it's simple too. It's like as we address these difficult situations in our lives, are we addressing them in our material package, our material consciousness, glued to our identities, glued to our sense of self, our ego, who we are and who we're not? Like, is this how we're approaching these difficult situations? Or are we approaching them from spiritual consciousness, from this realization that, hey, I'm a spirit soul. That's my eternal identity. And when we do that, how that shifts, right? How that shifts when we show up from that place that like I'm a spirit soul, right? And even our intentions, even our motivations shift. Maybe in material consciousness, you want to confront your boss because they're so wrong and you're so right, and they're a jerk, and you're fighting for justice, and these things. Okay, that's not bad. It's not good. It's just that okay. But when you're approaching this from spiritual consciousness, automatically you're going to show up with more compassion. You're going to show up from a place of more patience, more tolerance, and you're going to address the situation from that space. You may communicate the same things, but it's going to be in a much different way, and your motivation is going to be much different, right? Let me communicate these things because this is more in line with living for God. And in that way, I want to represent myself, and I want to try my best, whatever's in my control to help my environment align with that. And not attachment for myself or my ego, but in service to God. And just that consciousness transforms your whole life. Right? Yeah, Stella, what do you think?
Yeah, I have also approached a difficult boss situation kind of that way, but also even when I feel like you can also be bolder because you're free. You're free
Yes.
of it defining you. So
Mm.
even when it's not difficult, like I had on Tuesday, I was teaching and I just felt like I could just be who I was because I didn't, their opinion of me, even if they were like, if I was being a little over dramatic or, because sometimes I'm a big ham on stage, in front of the class. And um, it's like they're all beautiful souls. I am under Krishna's protection. I don't need to be even defined in my role as teacher. Like, of course you have to have all those things, but deep down inside, I was like, I can be bold to be even what might like embarrass them of me being, like passionate about something. I just feel like you can be freer when you bring that consciousness, not only compassionate, but free.
That is amazing and so on point. And that is exactly, yeah, what this consciousness does. Because if you think about it, you're not just clinging so tightly to your material identity. Like, I need to prove myself, I need to exert my opinion in this instant. And if I'm not listened to, I'm going to make it mean something about myself and others. And you're not in that space, right? And in that way, it's like, just like you said, you can just be yourself. Like, yeah, I notice this is going on. This isn't quite sitting. But at the same time, I'm not so attached to it that I'm like a part of the story. It's like, yeah, there's like some space there. And in there, and in that, there's like some softness and ultimately freedom. Yeah. And what happens is other people pick up on that. They see that you're not so attached, that you're, and they're like, oh, what, it makes them feel a little bit more like at peace. Like, oh, okay, well, if they're not so attached or then maybe maybe they're on to something, you know? Because sometimes if we think other people's motives are like rooted in the ego, we're like automatically out to lunch, like not interested, right? But when people feel that softness, that peacefulness, that they're like, huh, okay, maybe, you know, it makes them naturally a little bit more open, right? Yeah, those are beautiful. Such nice realizations. But this is a practice. This is like a lifelong practice. And the beautiful thing about life is that there'll be something in your life that you'll be able to show up for in this way, and you'll be like, oh wow, I'm really getting this. I'm really vibing with this like identity as a spirit soul. And then something will hit you, something that you're much more attached to than maybe you thought you were. And that's like, you know, Krishna's raising the bar. Like, okay, you got that. Good job. You did well. Try this. You know, and this is like the mirror right into all of our attachments and right into all of our, you know, our conditioning. But that's what spiritual life is, right? And we have these opportunities to constantly just level up. Like, okay, try to show up to this situation peaceful when you're so rooted in this identity, and this is, you know, that this is challenging that. See if you can show up in a way, you know, that brings this peace and freedom, where you're remembering me and you're not just stuck on your material identity. Yeah, that's difficult, but that's the journey of life. And we're fortunate to have those opportunities because all of them are just preparing us for this final moment where we have to shed all these identities anyway. Right? Like whether or not you're challenged to in this life, you're going to have to at the end of it. And how are you going to be able to show up in that moment? So nice. Thank you. So yeah, getting back to these terms. Well, we're going to dig into them a little bit more deeply so that when we walk out of here, this is super clear for you guys. And we talked about these terms before: karma, akarma, and sacrifice. Okay, so we're going to just kind of like break these down so we can again really highlight the difference between material consciousness and like the material cycle and the spiritual. Okay, so in the Gita, karma refers to actions that bind the soul to material bodies. Right? The cycle of birth and death. That's how it's being defined in this context. Right? Actions that bind the soul to material bodies. This is karma. Okay? And in the Gita, when we talk about things like this, like karma kanda, right? Like performing sacrifices in the material world to get something in return. Right? It's like, okay, I'm going to do this so that I'm going to, you know, do this sacrifice so that God gives me rain so that my plants grow. Or, you know, it's like we think of it as like the metaphysical Amazon Prime, right? Like, okay, I want this, I'll give you my money, you give me this product. It's like a very transactional relationship with God, right? Akarma, on the other hand, so okay, and I should explain what happens to this too. Okay, so in the Vedic system, when people are doing these things, like doing these actions to get direct results, their rituals, they're usually aiming for rewards like enjoying heavenly planets. And heavenly planets are even still in this like material existence, but that's what they're doing, right? They're trying to acquire some pious credits so that they can go to some heavenly planets, right? But what happens is once that merit is exhausted, the soul comes back to earth and gets a new body, and this cycle of acting and reaping results continues, right? And that's what we call karma. Okay. So this is how you get kind of trapped in the cycle of birth and death, and how your karma gives you another material body. Right? We talked about that a good amount. So now let's juxtapose that to akarma. So it's karma with an A in front of it. Right? This is action that doesn't bind us to material results. right? So this is like we're still acting in the world, but because our consciousness is in a different place, it's not binding us to material results. It's not binding us to this body, right? Like devotional service to God, that's akarma. Acting for Him, it doesn't create future material bodies. So this is where sacrifice becomes transformative, right? Krishna's expanding the meaning of sacrifice here. So we can say sacrifice in the context of like karma kanda, where you're performing a sacrifice for some direct material benefit, like going to a heavenly planet. We can call that sacrifice. But Krishna's expanding the meaning here. He's saying true sacrifice is offering something you could have used for yourself for a higher purpose, right? For Dharma, for truth, for Krishna. And if we look around at our lives, everything could be sacrifice, right? So it's not even about what you do. It's about the consciousness that you do it with, right? Even Arjuna's fighting in the war. It's a form of sacrifice, right? He's acting according to Krishna's guidance, and he's offering the results to a higher purpose, right? Other actions, eating, procreation, like these things, everything can be sacrifice. And so in short, sacrifice shows how this karma, which are these activities that we do that lead to a material body, right, can be transformed into akarma, right? So that actions that are normally binding the soul can become means of returning to the spiritual platform when done with that devotional consciousness. So this is like the bridge from the material to the spiritual world. And it's all about the consciousness. So it's not, if you have a job, no problem. If you have a family, no problem. If your day is super full with all these material responsibilities, no problem, right? Change your consciousness around the way that you approach these things and the way that you do these things. Do them as an offering to God. And this is how you get liberated from the cycle of birth and death. This is how you go back to the spiritual world at the end of all of this. Right? It's a changing this consciousness. And we talked a little bit about what this looks like when we start to show up for our day, for our responsibilities, for those tough situations that are inevitable with this spiritual consciousness, right? It's not running away from it. It's not, okay, well, I'm surrounded by people that aren't into this at work. I'm going to quit my job. It's not that, right? It's how can you show up at your job in this spiritual consciousness and be a light for yourself and others. And this shift of consciousness is what will bring you back to the spiritual world, what will get you out of this cycle of karma, this birth and rebirth, birth and rebirth, death and rebirth. Okay, that's what it is. Right? So it's good for us to think, when we think about our daily habits, our actions, our work, our family, right? Do we usually see them as just like ordinary activities, right? Or do we sometimes glimpse how they can be akarma, right? And offering to something higher, right? And how do we do that? How do we even start to transition from that place of just ordinary activities, just going through the motions, just doing the things, right? To this place where these things, our lives become offerings. And I kind of want to throw this at you guys. And if you guys have some things, some ideas, I'd love to hear them. And if not, I can share a few things, and then maybe that will spark some things for you guys. How we can transform karma to akarma. Is this clear what I'm asking you guys? So I'll start, and then let's see some hands go up. So we start with our intention, right? Before we start our work, our chores, our interactions, we pause and we mentally dedicate that activity to God, right? Even like a 5-second prayer is fine, right? Like, let this be for you. That shifts the consciousness. Simple. Like you're at work, you have a lunch, you don't have time to offer. Just close your eyes, say a 5-second prayer. Let this be for you, right? Sometimes mine is like, let this be for you. Let this food nourish my body so that I can serve you in the way that you desire. Right? Just this intention. Simple, but effective. And then we can infuse offerings into routines, right? Cooking, we can offer the food before we eat it. Working, you go to work every day, see your effort as a service, not just for a paycheck, right? Or give some of that paycheck to service of God, to projects that are serving God, right? Parenting, right? Remember, you're caring for God's child, not just your child, right? So we're changing our relationship with the way that we interact with the world, right? And stay super mindful of the why. Constantly, we have to ask ourselves, am I doing this to satisfy my ego, or can I do it as an offering? Right? Just this simple check we come back to. Am I doing this to satisfy my ego, or can I do it as an offering? We know when we're doing it to satisfy our ego because we are attached and we feel that. It can be like physical. We're hot. We're like defensive. We're like involved, right? That's our ego working, right? So how do we shift that to do it more as an offering, right? Where we get this kind of like freedom that Stella's talking about, right? Connect our activities to remembrance, right? Chant a mantra or God's name while walking, cleaning, driving, whatever you're doing, even softly in the mind, right? We can spiritualize whatever you're doing, right? And this can be one of the toughest one. Release attachment, right? Do your best, but release attachment to results. Right? Success or failure, pleasant or frustrating, we're dedicating the outcome, right? And this attitude keeps the karma from binding us, right? Because we're not attached. We're giving it up. We're offering it to God. And the last one that I'll say here is serving others in this devotional mood, right? When we help a friend, a child, a colleague, remind yourself, I'm serving Krishna through them. I know Alyssa, she teaches speech to children, right? It doesn't have to be about the child. It doesn't have to be about you. It doesn't have to be about the school. It can be about service to God. Right? And how that small transformation in the consciousness, it can shift these actions into bhakti. Right? So again, it's less about changing the activity, more about changing the consciousness behind it. Okay, Shakti, I think I saw your hand up. What do you have for us?
Yeah, my hand was up and down. My hand was up and down because all of a sudden I started to cry and I was like, what's happening? I just am. Well, first of all, Katie, I so relate to what you were talking about. Like this year, I came back from India, beginning of the year in February, and I made a commitment to take the time that I watched endless TV to offering things to Krishna, to serving Krishna. So I don't put the TV on. Once in a while, like my husband might be watching sports or something, and the TV is on, but I don't watch TV at all. I haven't watched TV since I've been home from India, and that gives me the time to serve my deities downstairs, talk to them, ask them to ask them like the mood has changed, and that is what you're talking about, and that's why I'm so emotional because my mood, by sometimes just walking these steps, and having that intention of I want to get closer to Krishna, I want to be closer to his lotus feet, I want to serve him, I want to be humble, I want all of these things. Sometimes, I don't know, I know for me, I can't say sometimes, for me, wanting all of these things, wanting my intentions to be pure and not wanting any result from it. Even the fact that, I want someone to like me, that's a result. It's a want, right? So even something that small, like I've been every day, I wake up, before I eat, I offer my food to my deities downstairs. I say prayers to them. I sing the Shri Guru Gas to them with them, and we dance, and I do Achman, and that's how I start my day every single day. And when that happens, my day is an offering. Right from the start, I am in an offering mood. I'm offering to people, to God, to Krishna, whatever it is that I do. And when I'm there, I feel like I have so many anarthas that I just ask him, please help me be humble. Please let me show humility. Please let me serve you in a way that that will help the world, myself, not myself, but like that will help. And so it's like, even if you don't feel like, I guess my it's not a question, but it's jumping onto what Katie said, like adding on all of these different things, which I've been doing as well, and it works. I'm just, for
Krishna
me, it
works for
worked.
Kate.
Katie said it worked, for her. So try it. But also the intense nature of how my life has changed and how my mood and my heart and my soul have changed is not something you can buy.
Mm,
You couldn't say, here's $20,000, stop doing that. No, no, thank you. Because
yeah.
I feel I feel so, like, I know I'm always emotional, but I feel so much more connected to to the reality of where I should be.
Mm,
And when I say that, I mean like connected to Krishna, connected to serving, connected, not what am I going to get, but how can I help you? How can what
mm,
do you need? And when I move from that space, I feel so like light, like I'm not thinking, oh, me, and that really was kind of how I was brought up. So it was
yeah.
really hard for me to like shed those layers. But that's, like, to Katie's point, why I had to keep adding on. I had to, because if I wanted to get away from that, I had to add on. And
Yeah.
this is such a beautiful part of the Gita. Thank you so much. Like, I feel
Yeah.
so full of gratitude.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the ego suffocates us. This ego suffocates us, and we think that it's freeing us, but it's suffocating us. Yeah, thank you. Aaron, I'm glad you put your hand up because I was going to call on you next, so you made it easy.
Hare Krishna. Shakti, it's so beautiful what you shared, and I'm just praying to one day have a drop of the level of sincerity that you so clearly have. Um, and Radha, thank you so much for making this so practical, because that is like what I always want. I'm like, but what can I do today? So I really love this conversation specifically. And to be honest, though, I think something that I struggle with is some of the things that I bring into my day to day and them becoming so routine and like just habitual. And like, I think I don't have any pictures of Krishna at my desk at work, but I do have I brought in like a little peacock that I got at New Vrindavan. My coworker actually gave me a peacock feather, which is so sweet. But like now they're there. I don't like think of them, or like I listen to a lot of kirtan, and a lot of times it could be like the best kirtan ever, but it's like on in the background because I'm so
Mm,
absorbed in anything else. Um, so I was just thinking about like one thing that was, so that's a struggle I always have. So just sharing that one. But then two, I um I really appreciated Kartik last year, and I didn't realize it's coming so soon. It starts in 5 days, which is amazing. But last year, what I adopted for Kartik, like I only did for Kartik, and I did it for that month. And part of me was like, "This is so nice. I should keep doing it." But the other part of me is really glad that I didn't, because I think it made it, I don't know, like all the more special. And so I'm just like kind of thinking about that, and thinking about Kartik starting on the 7th, and what I want to do this year. And yeah, just getting all of these ideas from all of you. But I just wanted to share that for me, I don't know, sometimes it feels like more isn't always better, even though
mm.
that might sound terrible to say, because
I don't think so at all. No, it's actually true because if just like you said, if you have kirtan on 24/7, but you're not really listening to it, not really connecting with it, it's like, it's like getting a treadmill that sits in your corner.
right.
It's like better to be on the treadmill for 5 minutes a day than to be staring at it for, 30 minutes. It's like, Like you got your our consciousness has to be plugged in. We have to be
Mm,
present, just like any relationship that you have with your children, with your spouse, with your friends. If you're not present in that relationship, the quality of the relationship is going to directly reflect that level of presence. So, yeah, even just saying, I have this kirtan on all day, but for 5 minutes, I'm gonna really sit and look at a picture of Krishna when I listen to it, or I mean, honestly, Aaron, I see you come here and you're on camera, like you're very present in this class. That's pretty big to give an hour of your time and be present in a class like this and really thinking through it and applying it to your life and making these resolutions. I mean, that's huge. And that's a sacrifice to Krishna. That's a sacrifice of our time. And that is a karma. If we do it in that consciousness, like, look, Krishna, I just want to get to know you better. This is changing something inside of me. This is transforming my heart, right? Like Shakti said. And I'm sacrificing this time for this relationship. That's devotional service, and that's what we're talking about. But I love that you even have that presence of mind to say, hey, look, I have all these things, but I'm not always so connected. So okay, yeah, start small. Where could you be a little bit more connected in your day, and then let it grow organically. It's
yeah.
perfect.
Thank you for saying that though, because I feel like I'm really good at s- like being like that. This does not count as devotional service. Like not this specifically, but like anything in general. Like I'm just like really good at being like, I don't do anything, or like really discounting. I even worked at the Bhakti Center, but because I was paid for it, I was like, people, you compliment my seva. I'm like, this isn't seva. Like, this doesn't count. I'm really good at saying something doesn't count as it. So it's really helpful to be checked in
Yeah, and it's not even if you're getting paid for it. It's not
that.
even if you're getting paid for it or not. It's the consciousness around it.
Mm,
Like, and so those things, nobody could tell you whether or not, this is or isn't. It's your own relationship, and that's what is important, and that we need to just try to be a little bit more present for day by day. And
Radha, can I just share one quick thing?
yeah, right.
To Aaron, when I this year I was doing what you were doing. I was like, I'm doing half hour Bhagavatam, I'm gonna do this, and I was filling all my day with all this spiritual stuff. And I was like, I'm not getting like they're reading the Bhagavatam, they're reading so fast. I don't even know where I don't know where we are. I don't know what they're saying. So I similar to you, I was trying to and that's good. That is your intention to be closer to Krishna. You're putting all these things in your life trying to get there. That is such a beautiful intention. But you'll come to a time to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to put the Bhagavad-gītā class. I'm going to put this thing here. I'm going to sit for 5 minutes, outside while I eat whatever, and I'm going to listen to the kirtan, not at my desk, or I'm going to whatever. You don't. More is not better, and I can attest to that because I literally had something from London at 4 o'clock. Like I was like trying to fill my entire day with anything that had to do with the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-gītā. And you know what? You know what it did? It made me overwhelmed. And I sort of was like, and I wasn't really getting the nectar. Now that I have picked like very consciously certain things that I know that are in my soul. The nectar is like pouring over my head, like one of those chocolate things that you dip the strawberries in. I feel nectar just pouring over me, and that will happen. Not just, but find those things that really like this one. I see you on camera. You're always sharing. It's beautiful. It's
I know she's
so.
so hard on herself, right? It's hard
I
to believe that
know,
she thinks
right?
that.
Yeah, I don't know. And I hope what I said helped a little bit, but yeah, I mean, you're so
Nectar
beautiful.
fondue. I liked that also. That was really quite an image. So true. Yeah. I'll share one last thing with you guys today that happened to me at work. My boss is a devotee. He's been for like ever. I mean, he was like one of my guru's first disciples. He just happens to be my boss. Anyway, he'll like say slokas to me. And because like we talk a lot about Sastra and he's always like he talks to me like I like really know it, and he'll say slokas to me, and I'm like, to be honest with you, I haven't memorized very many slokas. I'm so intimidated by the words. And he kind of looks at me, I'm like, I know, I'm a teacher of the Gita, and I know the Gita in and out, but I don't know slokas very well. And he's like, look, you just need to slow down. He's like, you just need to stop making the goal about memorizing slokas and just make the goal about like absorbing the nectar. And so he actually took like 20 minutes at work and like goes through he teaches me his favorite sloka, 1866. If anybody wants to memorize it, I'm working on this one right now. And he goes through every word and he like defines it, and it was just like such a sweet experience. And just this kind of shift of like, don't make the goal to memorize sloka, make the goal to just be immersed in Krishna's words, like that's what we're doing. It doesn't have to, we don't have to, we love to like materialize like our material consciousness is like, okay, I need to do this and I need to have this and this. And it's like, no, just sit in the nectar, sit in the nectar fondue. Yeah. So anyway, that's helped me. That helped me, that conversation with him. Anyway, I want to do it. Let's start a sloka group. I love that idea. Let's talk about that offline because I'm working on it now. I told him, I'm like, look, it's time. It's been on my heart. I have this narrative in my head, like I can't do slokas. It's like this is just I need to get over this. Anyway, okay, sorry you all. Let's we are way over time, but thank you all for coming and for sharing. And I appreciate you all. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
One day.
Krishna, everyone.
Alyssa, you were here. What did you think?